Hey there, Saints. Welcome to Awaken's Sermon Spark Notes. So this past week, we continued in the book of Galatians, wrapping up chapter 3 and introducing chapter 4. And at the end of chapter 3, Paul is continuing the pattern that he has laid out over the first 3 chapters, continuing to make logical, well-thought-out arguments built on his authority as apostle to these Galatians. And in the end of chapter 3, he shifts the focus again to the law, which is the big issue at stake on the table here. And he's saying that the law being part of salvation is not fitting because your identity has changed. So it may have been true that law was a necessary part of salvation when you were, if I can say it, merely human. But that's not who you are anymore. You're now children of God. You're now heirs through Christ. And so the old rules don't come into play in the same way they did before. And so then the question that he imagines arises next is, well, then why give us the law in the first place if you always intended to give us grace? And Paul's response is, it took time. There's a proper time to things when children in life, right, are under a stewardship, are not old enough to take responsibility for their lives until they get to a place of maturity where they are. And that's what the law did. It acted as a guardian in those times until you were ready. And these are all great arguments, but then something shifts right at the end of 3 and the beginning of chapter 4, where that's very similar to how all of us tend to do when we get into these extended debates as well. After a while, the arguments, when you just feel like, man, I'm making all these great arguments and they don't land, it starts to get personal. And that's what happens to Paul here. The arguments start getting personal. He starts saying, I can't believe I've laid my life down for you. It's crazy to see that you're not being moved. And so he shares, I know that you love me, and you know that I love you. I'm a spiritual father to you. What has happened that's gotten lost? And so it's a really beautiful transition, especially for those of us who aren't Paul's biggest fans. And it's not because I think Paul was not a great apostle, but personality-wise, I don't imagine that Paul and I would necessarily get along all that great. We're just really different types of people. But to see his heart here shift from brain to heart was just really, really cool to see. So over the course of this coming week, as you're meditating on these verses and prayerfully going through and studying the book of Galatians alongside us, that's reading the scriptures, going through the devotional that we have prepared for you, I just really pray that you meditate, as you're meditating on these verses, you not only understand the arguments being made, but the heart of the man behind it. And hopefully that'll kind of give you new and fresh perspective on the scriptures. Saints, I hope you have a fantastic week, and God bless.